We see that correlates with the last 2-3 verses in Revelation chapter 6. Okay, so that chapter 6 and Matthew 24 are like parallel chapters you can read, talking about the same things, just giving a bit different insights. Well, were there any questions on that? Was it clear? Everyone just getting dusting off the cobwebs? All right, then, yeah, so we discussed that, the rapture bit. The third point was we had a look at Revelations. I just wanted to bring this up. When you go through Revelations, and I just want to reiterate this, it seems to be written topically, not sequentially. All right? This is also seen to be the consensus among most eschatology teachers. That when we look at Revelations, it is definitely topical, not sequential. That's why I have the chapters, which we're going to get into. I've spent some time putting a diagram together to try help to visualize it. The fourth point is this is the case for many of the prophets, actually. And also, so an example, this is like the book of Daniel. Revelations starts by giving a broad overview of events and then successively gets more and more detailed. So an example is Daniel chapter 2. Remember Daniel chapter 2, it's the statue, a head of gold, the shoulders of bronze, and then it goes to, of silver, bronze, and then iron mixed with clay. Then in chapter 7, it goes a lot more in detail about those kingdoms. Okay, but then it talks about the kingdoms like different beasts. It talks about, the lion with wings and the leopard with 4 heads and so on. And it breaks it down. So Revelations is doing the same. You've got topics like seals, and topics then that deal with like almost rapture, and then topics that deal with judgment, and then topics that go more in depth with regards to what was discussed there. So when you read it straight, you can get very confused if you don't really know in depth. So that's why what I've done now is I've tried to link it up. Take all those chapters, so you'll have a bigger overview and then more detail and more detail. So what I've tried to do is put them all sequentially so we can read it and it flows one to another. Okay. So therefore, when reading Revelations, it can seem as if events are mixed up. This is not the case. It's just the way it is written. It's just the way that many of the prophets, if you go read, for instance, Isaiah, got 66 chapters that are all mixed up because it is topical, not sequential. Okay. So I'm just reiterating that, and I have discussed that, but I just want you guys have to have that in your mind in order to see why I've placed the chapter. So we're going to go to the next slide, and I hope that this slide will help bring clarity with the way the chapters. Now, hear me out first. I'm not saying that this is to the best of my understanding and knowledge at this point. I've gone through Revelations. I've lost count on how many times I've gone through these chapters to have a broad overview, including what's said in Zechariah, what's said in Daniel, what's said elsewhere in other prophets, and have a consistent and almost a linear timescale of this. So this is this is what I've put together, and I think it'll make a lot of sense once we start reading, and you'll see. So what we've tackled so far, the first block, it shouldn't be 6, sorry, it should be 4 and 5. And that first little block, just that's a mistake there, I'll have to correct it. And it should be chapter 4, chapter 5, then the longer block, chapter 6. So you'll see in the bottom, we've got the 7-year period, which we call the 70th week of Daniel, okay? It's broken up obviously into 2 portions, and I've given the scripture there where it talks about, in Daniel 9:27, where it talks about the breaking of the covenant, okay? We're going to get into this. So I've got there the 7-year period, and then above it, the chapters, and the timeline the chapters are running against that 7-year period. Okay, any questions before we move on? So now what we're going to do is we're going to jump into, we've done chapter 4, 5, and 6. We're going to now jump into the next portion, which will start in chapter 17, then it will be 13 and 18. Okay, what do I mean next portion? The next portion of events that will take place after that. So we're going to jump now into chapter 17, if you can turn there. Well, you should be there already. Please, guys, feel free to stop and ask questions if there is anything that you're not sure about. Quickly, before we get into chapter 17, chapter 17 is a more in-depth look at who the beast is. We have already read chapter 13, 17, and 18, but we've read them at different times. So I wanted to read it one shot so that we have the full picture as we go forward. All right. So chapter 17 is far more in-depth look at who the beast is, who Babylon the Great is. I know we spent a lot of time there, but it's going to make a lot more sense when we go through it like that. Then chapter 13, once again, deals with the beast again and events that are taking place. And then chapter 18 is a continuation of what's going to happen to the world and the judgment. All right. So chapter 8 is saying, after we see the beast has done all these things, God uses chapter 8 and says, this is the judgment that's going to take place on the beast and on Babylon the Great, and he goes through it. So we need to understand that first before we get into the judgments. All right. And what we see is that the judgments happened before, and then we have chapter 18 talking about the judgments that are going to, it's almost like chapter 18 is talking in future tense, but there's also sometimes like it's happened already. But I've placed it there so you can read, this is who the beast is, and this is judgments that are going to happen, and then we're going to look at the judgments. Make sense? Okay. You'll see as we go. I'll be explaining as we go along. All right, so we're going to do a lot of reading, and then where I feel there needs to be some explanation, I'll jump in. If you feel, stop, slow down, what about this, what about that, please just shout. Okay. So chapter 17. And one of the 7 messengers who had, sorry, I'm reading from the scriptures, so it might be slightly different if you're reading from King James or something like that. So obviously when it talks about messengers here, it's talking about angel. Okay. And one of the 7 messengers who had the 7 bowls came and spoke with me, saying to me, come, I will show you the judgment of the great whore sitting on many waters. All right, it starts with the last judgment, mentioning the last judgment. So what's been happening is the judgments have been taking place. And now it goes through what's happening to Babylon the Great, to the beast. So like I said, we're going to read about what's going to take place, and then we'll go through the judgments. Saying, okay, come, I will show you the judgment of the great whore sitting on many waters, with whom the sovereigns of the earth committed whoring, and inhabitants of the earth were made drunk with the wine of her whoring. And he carried me away in the spirit into the wilderness. So just remember wilderness, we did speak about this previously, it's an important point. And I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast covered with names of blasphemy, having 7 heads and 10 horns. The reason I'm going to read it in the way I put it down here is because it's going to explain each of these pictures. So once we get through it, you'll be like, okay, I understand what's going on. So it had 7 heads and 10 horns, and the woman was dressed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls, holding in her hand a golden cup filled with abomination and the filthiness of her whoring. Remember, when it talks about whoring, it talks about false worship, okay? It's about idolatry, okay? Remember, it says Babylon, okay, we're going to get that now. It says, and upon her forehead a name written in secret, Babylon the Great, the mother of the whores and of the abominations of the earth. So this actual title is in the Middle East when they say the mother of. They're not talking about actually a physical mother, but they're talking about the biggest. Okay? So they're saying this is the biggest of all false religions. This is the biggest of all idolatry. Once again, I did go through this in quite detail in previous teaching, but I just want to recap on this. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the set-apart ones, and with the blood of the witness of Yeshua. And having seen her, I marveled greatly. Greatly marveled. And the messenger said to me, "Why did you marvel? Let me explain to you the secret of the woman and of the beast she rides, which has the 7 heads and the 10 horns. The beast that you saw was and is not, and is about to come up out of a pit of the deep and goes to destruction. And those dwelling on the earth, whose names are not written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, shall marvel when they see the beast that was and is not, and yet is." You see, the reason why I decided to read this chapter before is, can you see it's talking about future? When they see the beast. And chapter 13 talks about the beast and what he's going to be doing. So that's why I wanted to read this first to give that insight. All right, verse 9, it says, "Here is the mind having wisdom. The 7 heads are 7 mountains on which the woman sits." Okay, a lot of people will say, "Oh, this is Rome or this because of 7 mountains," but the writer clarifies. "And there are 7 sovereigns, 5 have fallen, and 1 is, and the other has not yet come. And when he comes, he has to remain a little while." So 7 mountains, 7 sovereigns. It's referring to the same thing. What it's saying is the 7 kingdoms. Often when we read in Torah or in the prophets, we'll see it says Mount Edom. It will be talking about a kingdom that will refer to a mountain for the kingdom. It's using the same terminology here. It's in 7 mountains, 7 kings. Okay, he makes the distinction that you're not talking about someone sitting, a kingdom sitting on 7 hills. No, it's talking about 7 kingdoms. What were the 7 kingdoms? It says 5 have fallen, 1 is, and 1 is to come. Well, at the time of John, what 5 kingdoms had fallen? Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Media-Persia, and Greece. Correct? Those are the 5. He says 1 is, who was ruling at the time of John? Rome. 1 is to come, who conquered after Rome, all that territory? The Islamic Caliphate. That was the only kingdom that conquered all that land and greater. And that's why it's very much, I'm very convinced that it is the Islamic kingdom is the 7th, because it's the only kingdom that crushed everything beneath its feet. Remember in Daniel chapter 7, it says that there was a beast that came up unlike any one of the previous ones. It means it was very different. Rome can't be the 6th, 7th, and 8th, because it says after Rome. So how can it be Rome if Rome is the 6th? All right, so it must be a different kingdom to Rome. Also, Rome didn't crush every kingdom underneath it in terms of religious, historical. When the Islamic Caliphate came in, they raised history, they raised religion, they raised everything. You either surrender or you die. That's it. And they're the only kingdom, like I said, that conquered geographically all the previous kingdoms. And when we read in Revelations 13, which we're going to get into, you will see that this beast, that once again gives you a picture, is made up of all the animals that are referenced in Daniel 7. Remember, it says Babylon is the lion, Medo-Persia is the bear, Greece is the leopard. In Revelations 13, we see that there's a combination of all those kingdoms into one animal. So it's saying that this kingdom, geographically, is going to rule over all that area. Only the Islamic Caliphate did that, not the empire. Okay. So when we try to figure out who these are, we always have to go back to these biblical facts and historically what happened. Because we can quickly go, oh, but no, but isn't it this kingdom or isn't it that? Well, do they tick these boxes? Yes, no. And then it's easier to make a mind up about it. Now, obviously, I'm not saying it definitely is. There could be a kingdom that comes in the future that is different. I don't think we have that much time. But, anything can happen. But at the moment, the Islamic kingdom has the best chances, in my view. It ticks more boxes. It also says that We'll read it here, verse 11. Let me just read verse 10 again. And there are 7 sovereigns, 5 have fallen, and 1 is, and the other has not yet come. That's the Islamic Caliphate that came. And when he comes, he has to remain a little while. And the beast that was and is not is himself also the 8th, and is of the 7th, and goes to destruction. So the beast that was, the Islamic Caliphate, is not, because it was disbanded, it was ended, it was cut off, 1924, I think. The last naming of the Ottoman Empire, I think, was 1924, and then it was stopped, and it got separated. And then it says, it will rise again. It comes back. That's the rebirth of it. Okay, there will be a figurehead that brings it back together. And the world will marvel, like, how did this happen? Okay. Verse 12, and the 10 horns which you saw are 10 sovereigns who have not yet received a reign, but receive authority as sovereigns with the beast for 1 hour. So there's 10 nations around that are going to join forces with the beast, but it will be for a short time. They have one mind, and they shall give their power and authority to the beast. They shall fight with the Lamb, and the Lamb shall overcome them, for he is master of masters and sovereign of sovereigns, and those with him are called and chosen and trustworthy. And he said to me, the waters which, so this is important part, just remember this, the waters which you saw were where the horse sits are peoples and crowds and nations and tongues. And the 10 horns which you saw on the beast, these shall hate the whore, and they who waste the naked, and eat her flesh, and burn her with fire. For Elohim did give into their hearts to do his mind, to be of one mind, and to give their reign to the beast, until the words of Elohim shall be accomplished. And the woman whom you saw is this great city, having sovereignty over the sovereigns of the earth. Guys, I went into great detail explaining this chapter previously, pointing out that Mecca has been the biggest false religion that's ever existed. There's never been a religion that has, there is no bigger second religion to Christianity than Islam. Okay, it's the biggest false religion. So when we're looking at who is Babylon the Great is, talking about a city in a wilderness. Remember, in Israel, a wilderness is a desert. And we looked at possibly Mecca, Saudi Arabia, that area. Okay? If you guys want to recap, go watch that video. I go into a lot of depth there. I'm not saying it is 100%. I'm saying that it's a very good option. All right. Any questions before we move on? Okay, we are then, going to go backwards, chapter 13. Now, I think you'll understand why I've done it like this. Right, chapter 13. And I saw on the sand of the sea, and I saw a beast coming up out of the sea, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and on the horns 10 crowns, and on his heads names of blasphemy. Okay, so a beast. All right, it's the kingdoms of the world. There's 7 kingdoms, the 7 heads, and there are on one of these 10 horns, all right, which talks about those 10 kings that we just read about. And the beast I saw was like a leopard. All right, now we're going to go through it. Like a leopard, and his feet were like the feet of a bear, and his mouth like the mouth of a lion. All right. Once again, geographically, the Islamic Caliphate, after the time of Rome, conquered all that area. Geographically and more, all right? And they totally crushed it. They totally erased the religion, the history. You can go do your historical reading and you'll see. That's exactly what happened. So there's a combination of all that land mass, which fits exactly what John was writing in. And the dragon gave him his power and his throne and great authority. And I saw one of his heads as having been slain to death, and his deadly wound was healed, and all the earth marveled after the beast. Remember, he is not, and he is to come. The head was slain, so that kingdom died and is going to be rebirthed. That's what it's saying here. And they worshipped the dragon who gave authority to the beast, and they worshipped the beast, saying, who is like the beast? Who is able to fight with him? And he was given a mouth speaking great matters and blasphemies, and he was given authority to do so for 42 months. In this picture here, you'll see there, I've got 3.5 years, 42 months, 1,260 days. Arthur. Hasatan. The chapter 12 identifies who that is. All right, so if you want to, chapter 12, the reason I'm not reading chapter 12 now is that we've already gone through it. You remember, it's a summary from the birth of Messiah to this point where Hasatan Satan enables the beast to do his work. Right. So I've got here the first 3.5 years. Remember, this is like the beginning of sorrows. The sealed judgments are mainly taking place this time. And then the second 3.5 years, we've still got some of these sealed judgments, but then the great tribulation also begins. Okay. The great tribulation, that's the second part of the seals, where the Antichrist is making war with everyone. Well, specifically God's people and Israel. Remember the Gog-Magog war that Bruce was talking about? We're going to get a bit more into that just now. So 42 months, the reason I've listed those 3 different dates, because in Revelation and in Daniel, it both mentions 3.5 years, 1,260 days, or 42 months. It's all talking about the same period. The period the Antichrist is going to be making war with God's people, the period of the Great Tribulation and the judgments. Okay. Verse 6, and he opened his mouth in blasphemies against Elohim, to blaspheme his name and his tent and those dwelling in the heavens. And it was given to him to fight with the set-apart ones and to overcome them. And authority was given to him over every tribe and tongue and nation, and all those dwelling on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the Lamb, of the slain Lamb, from the foundations of the world. And from the foundations of the world shall worship. Let me read that verse again, sorry. And all those dwelling on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life of the slain Lamb, from the foundation of the world shall worship him. If anyone has an ear, let him hear. He who brings into captivity will go into captivity. He who kills with the sword has to be killed with the sword. Here is the endurance and the belief of the set-apart ones. And I saw another beast coming up out of the earth, and he had 2 horns like a lamb and spoke like a dragon. All right? This is talking about the false prophet. And we will talk about the false prophet a bit more just now. And he exercises all the authority of the first beast in his presence, and causes the earth and those who dwell in it to worship the first beast, whose deadly wound was healed. Now, interestingly, it talks about the lamb. Who do we know as being the lamb? It just talks about the lamb that was slain. And then it talks about a lamb, a sheep arising. That's a beast. Interesting that the Islamic eschatology believes that Jesus, you think it's Isis, the Islamic Jesus is going to come back. And here it's saying there's going to be a lamb, a sheep. He's going to be clothed in sheep clothing. I am the true Messiah. I am Jesus. And he's going to try, cause many to apostatize, to turn away from Christianity. I'm not saying that is 100%. I'm saying that this is what Islam teaches. That there Jesus is going to come back as a prophet, and he's going to do evangelism, massive evangelism, and bring the people of the world into Islam. Okay. So it's interesting that this mentions that specifically, that the beast is going to be a sheep. Which is interesting. And it's got 2 horns. Now, if we look at these horns, previously when we saw horns, what did a horn represent? It represented a man, a king, specifically. Okay? It says each horn represents a king. So now there's two horns. So I don't know, but what I'm saying is maybe there's more than one false prophet. A lot of people go, it's the Pope. It's Islam. Maybe there's two guys that are working together. I don't know. At the moment, like I think Uncle Grant spoke about it last week or the week before, about Islam and Christianity merging, into, what was it called? Chrislam. Okay, so there might be a massive figurehead from both sides deceiving. All right, that's just a point. I don't know if that is. There's no way in scripture I can say that what it means. Just from what I can see, a horn was talking about a specific person, a sovereign, and here this beast has two horns, so it could be. Just keep that in the back of your mind. Verse 13. And he does great signs so that he even makes fire come down from the heaven on the earth before men. And he leads astray those dwelling on the earth because of these signs which he was given to do before the beast, saying to those dwelling on the earth to make an image to the beast who was wounded by the sword yet lived. And there was given to him to give spirit or life to the image of the beast, that the image of the beast should both speak and cause to be killed as many as would not worship the image of the beast. Now, there's a lot of speculation about what this could be. Okay, this image. I honestly don't know. Is it some artificial system, tracking system? I don't know. I don't know what it is. But I don't think it's going to be some, spirit thing. I think it's going to just be some way of tracking people or being able to influence. What it is, I don't know. There's a lot of speculation out there, but I'm not going to say what it is and what it's not. I'm not sure. And he causes, verse 16, and he causes all, both small and great, and rich and poor, and free and slave, to be given a mark upon their right hand or upon their forehead, and that no one should be able to buy or sell except he that has the mark of the name of the beast or the number of his name. Here's the wisdom. He who has understanding, let him calculate the number of the beast, for it is the number of a man, and his number is 666. Now, what is the mark of the beast? Once again, I don't know. I'm not going to say it's a microchip. I'm not going to say it's this or that. I don't know. For all I know, it could be just a renunciation of Messiah. That's what happened previously in the Islamic Empire. When you went to the marketplace and you wanted to buy food, you had to say, you had to renounce Messiah and say, Muhammad is the true servant of God and Allah is the only God. That's what you had to say. It was like a mark. If you didn't say it, sorry, you can't buy from us, and obviously you're not one of us. Is the power out? No. Okay. I was about to make a joke, but maybe I should. To make it a bit lighter. It does say in the end times it will be very dark. So Eskom is fulfilling the prophecy. Any questions on that chapter? Do you guys see how that flows from chapter 17? If you read it like that, it's a bit more, chapter 17 gives you a bit more insight into who these characters are, and then when you jump to chapter 13, you already got, oh, this is the beast, and so on. All right, now we're going to jump to chapter 18, which is now, we've seen here the beast has been going, he's been making war with the saints, he's causing everyone to take the mark of the beast, but there's judgment coming. And that's what chapter 18 deals with. What judgment is going to come? And after this, I saw another messenger, so another angel coming down from the heaven, having great authority, and the earth was lightened from his esteem. And he cried with a mighty voice, saying, Babel, the great is fallen, is fallen. Remember, Babylon and Babel occupy the same area. Okay? Babylon, the kingdom Babylon under Nebuchadnezzar, same geographical location as where Babel was. Okay? Babel has fallen and has become a dwelling place for demons, a haunt for every unclean spirit, and a haunt for every unclean and hated bird. Okay? It's a house of wickedness. It's a house of depravity, perversity. Every evil thing is in this area. Because all the nations have drunk of the wine of the wrath of her whoring, and the sovereigns of the earth have committed whoring with her, and the merchants of the earth have become rich through the power of her riotous living. And I heard another voice from the heaven saying, Come out of her, my people, lest you share in her sin, and lest you receive her plagues. So I believe this is just before the rapture takes place, just before the plagues are going to be poured out. God's saying, He's warning His people once again, hey, if you've turned from me, turn back, because I'm coming, and I'm going to take you out. I'm going to take you out of this place. So that's what it says, lest you receive of her plagues, because her sins have piled up to reach the heaven. And Elohim has remembered her unrighteousness. He does not forget, as we saw with Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, when they destroyed Israel, he brought a rod of correction against them. Every kingdom that has acted wickedly, he has brought correction. And once again, he allows this Babylon to be a rod of correction to the world, and then he brings correction on them, just like he did with Egypt. Okay? Egypt was used as a rod, and then he used the rod on them with the plagues. That's exactly the plagues that are going to pour out here. It's the same, we see, it's for the same purpose, that people will repent. Because he's a loving Father. This isn't, I'm going to destroy all of you. This is going, please repent. And you will see, people will not repent, they will blaspheme. Verse 6, render to her as she indeed did render, and repay double according to her works. In the cup which she has mixed for her double. As much as she esteemed herself and lived righteously, so much torture and grief give to her, because in her heart she says, I sit as sovereigness, and I am not a widow, and I do not see mourning at all. Carry on the way you want and do not pay any attention to the damage you cause. Because of this, her plague shall come in one day, death and mourning and scarcity of food, and she shall be burned up with fire, because Jehovah, Elohim, who judges her, is mighty, and the sovereigns of the earth, who committed whoring and lived righteously with her, shall weep and mourn over her when they see the smoke of the burning. Remember, this is a city, as we spoke about in great depth about this. Standing at a distance for fear of her torture, saying, Woe, woe, the great city, Babel, the mighty city, because your judgment has come in 1 hour. And the merchants of the earth weep and mourn over her, because no one buys their merchandise anymore, merchandise of gold and silver and precious stone and pearls and fine linen and purple and silk and scarlet, and all citron wood, and every object of ivory, and every object of the most precious wood, and bronze, and iron, and marble, and cinnamon, and incense, and fragrant oil, and frankincense, and wine, and oil, and fine flour, and wheat, and cattle, and sheep, and horses, and chariots, and bodies, and lives of men. And so remember, that's why we looked at Saudi Arabia being a very good candidate, because they do not grow anything there, they import everything. Okay, this is a consumerism nation, or consumer nation. They consume everything. All right, does Italy do that? No, they produce a lot of their own stuff. It talks about chariots here. This is cars, vehicles, transportation. Italy produces a lot of their own transportation. But Saudi Arabia, they import everything, and also talks about the souls of men. There's a lot of trafficking that goes to Saudi Arabia, a huge amount. But like I said, I spoke in great depth about this already in the previous teaching. And the fruit that your being longed for has gone from you, and all your riches and splendor are lost to you, and you shall find them no more, not at all. The merchants of these, those who became rich by her, shall stand at a distance for fear of her torture, weeping and mourning, and saying, Woe, woe, the great city that was dressed in fine linen and purple and scarlet, and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. For in 1 hour such great riches was laid waste, in every shipmaster and every passenger and sailor, and has made, and as many as work the sea for their living stood at a distance, and cried out when they saw the smoke of her burning, saying, What is like this great city? And they threw dust on their heads and cried out, weeping and mourning, and saying, Woe, woe, the great city in which all who had ships on the sea became rich by her wealth. For in 1 hour she was laid waste. And rejoice over her, O heaven, and you set apart ones, emissaries and prophets, for Elohim has completely avenged you on her. Every wrong that has been done, God will set right. There will be justice because he is a righteous judge. Verse 21. And one mighty messenger, one mighty angel, picked up a stone like a great millstone and threw it into the sea, saying, With such a rush, this great city, Babel, shall be thrown down and shall not be found any more at all. Remember, this is talking about what is going to happen to Babel. So we're going to read through the plagues and we're going to see everything that God's going to pour out on them. And the sound of the harpist and the musician and the flutist and the trumpeter shall not be heard in you any more at all. And no craftsman of any trade shall be found in you any more at all. And the sound of the millstone shall not be heard in you any more at all. And the light of a lamp shall not shine in you any more at all. And the voice of a bridegroom and a bride shall not be heard in you any more at all. For your merchants were the great ones of the earth, for by your drugged sorcery all the nations were led astray, and in her was found the blood of prophets and set apart ones, and of all who were slain on the earth. All right, the judgment is going to be severe. We still have time. Do you guys want to carry on? That's what I plan to do today. Are you guys still up for more? All right, so what we're going to get into next is just before God pours out judgment, what happens? A snatching. He comes and he takes his people, and we're going to see a clear image of this in Revelation 14. All right, so the beast has done his work in Babylon the Great, and they've done a lot of evil, and God said, this is the judgment that's going to happen. And now we jump into chapter 14. For I looked and saw a lamb standing at Mount. Once I get in here, there was just a note I wanted to make. Sorry, I didn't prepare for this portion. The note I wanted to make, the reason I've got chapter 14 before chapter 7. So both of them are dealing with the sealing of the 144,000. But it seems as though chapter 7 happens just after the rapture, and chapter 14 is talking about just before the rapture, the gathering. All right. And we see the saints still on the earth, but in chapter 7, if we get to it, we'll see that the saints are before the throne in heaven. Okay. And that's why I put it in this order. Okay, and I looked and saw a lamb standing on Mount, is it Mount Sinai? Yours, Mount Zion. Okay, given a different title. It's Tision. Sorry? Yeah, I know it's Zion. I'm just saying that this book, it's a bit funny. Yeah, Zion, okay. And with him 144,000, having his father's name written upon their foreheads. And I heard a voice out of the heaven, like the voice of many waters, and like the voice of a loud thunder. And I heard the sound of harpers playing their harps. And they sang a reward, saying, before the throne and before the four living creatures and the elders, and no one was able to learn that song except the 144,000 who were redeemed from the earth. We'll talk a little bit about who these are now, and why they mentioned it. There are those who were not defiled with women, for they are, this is called maidens. There are those following the Lamb wherever he leads them on. They were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to Elohim and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was no falsehood, for they are blameless before the throne of Elohim. Right, this is why Jehovah's Witnesses, it's not quite right what they believe, because if they come read this, then I don't think any of them qualify to be one of the 144,000. And in their mouth was found no deceit, no falsehood, for they are blameless before the throne of Elohim. And I saw another messenger flying in mid-heaven, holding the everlasting good news to announce to those dwelling on the earth, even to every nation and tribe and tongue and people, saying with a loud voice, fear Elohim and give esteem to him, because the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made the heaven and the earth and the sea and foundations of water. God has set up all these people, and I believe this 144,000 are going to be used as a tool to bring salvation to people during this judgment. Because even in the judgment, I think there is hope. I think that God desires that people, remember, he's using this for correction. He's using this so that people repent and come back. So I think he seals these people, because when he pours out his judgment, they'll be sealed. Like Moses, remember? When he went in, he walked and the hail was falling and he wasn't touched. This is an image of Moses. They represent Israel. Moses did represent Israel in many ways. And they're going to be going through the world, bringing the gospel and trying to bring Pharaoh to repentance. The world. Okay. That's how I see it. Verse 8, and another messenger followed, saying, Babylon is fallen, is fallen. Babylon is fallen, why? Because he's about to come judgment. It's the end. And it's going to be destroyed. The great city, because she has made all nations drink of the wine of her wrath, of her whoring. Now, can you see here, before this, Babylon is not mentioned. This is the first time, and this is chapter 14. Now, did you see how much information there was in chapter 17 and 18 about Babylon, who it is, what they're going to be doing? So having that background and now reading here, oh, Babylon the Great is going to be, it's going to have judgment. You understand who it is and what they're doing and everything about that. So it makes sense to have that background first. Verse 9. And a third messenger followed them, saying with a loud voice, if anyone worships the beast and his image, and receives his mark upon his forehead or upon his hand, he also shall drink of the wine of the wrath of Elohim, which is poured out undiluted into the cup of his wrath. And he shall be tortured with fire and sulfur before the set apart messengers and before the Lamb. And the smoke of their torture goes up forever and ever, and they have no rest day or night, those who worship the beast and his image. What's image? Also, if anyone receives the mark of his name. Here is the endurance of the set apart ones. Here of those guarding the commandments of Elohim and the belief of Yeshua. You see, the set apart ones are still there on earth. And he's saying, endure. That's almost end. It's near the end. And I heard a voice out of the heavens saying to me, right, blessed are the dead who die in the Master from now on. So there are people that it's near the end of the Antichrist reign, and he's making war with the saints. This is my personal understanding of it. I know there's what's it called, mid-trib, pre-trib, post-trib. I believe it's just before God pours out judgment. And I think there's plenty of verses that refer to that. But I'm not going to get too much into that. That's just my how I see it here. Right, blessed are the dead who die in the Messiah from now on. They are in the Messiah, they are saved, but they are dying. Okay. Yes, says the Spirit, in order that they rest from their labors and their work follows with them. And I looked and saw a white cloud. Now I believe this is the rapture taking place. Remember, we'll see him in the cloud. And standing on the cloud was one like the son of Adam, having on his hand a golden crown and in his hand a sharp sickle. And another messenger came out of the dwelling place, crying with a loud voice to the one sitting on the cloud, send your sickle and reap, because the hour has come for you to reap, because the harvest of the earth is ripe. And the one sitting on the cloud thrust in his sickle on the earth, and the earth was reaped. And another messenger came out of the dwelling place, which is in the heavens, and he took hold of a sharp sickle. And another messenger came out from the slaughter place, having authority over the fire, and he cried with a loud cry to him having the sharp sickle, saying, send your sharp sickle and gather the clusters of the vine of the earth, because her grapes are ripe. And the messenger thrust the sickle into the earth and gathered the vine of the earth and threw it into the great winepress of the wrath of Elohim. And the winepress was trodden outside the city, and blood came out of the winepress up to the bridle of the horses. For about 1,600 sardia. So what I think is happening here is that we see a few sickles. I think there is the harvest, the rapture, with the taking up of God's people. There's a separation. And there is a weighing of the fruit. Right? Let's weigh the fruit of the world. And there's going to be judgment. So when it talks about this blood, it's, I'm going to see your fruit. Is there any good fruit here? And there's judgment according to that fruit that is produced. Any questions on this? Everyone good? Everyone understand 100%? What? All right, I'll talk. All right.
Does it not relate to the recent text where God says when He's going to come, when the grain is ripe, He's first going to take the wheat and tares out, and they're going to work.
Yeah.
The wheat is still there. So if that verse kind of sounds to me, it's not going to be good to read.
Yeah, no, I think there's two different, we see different angels reaping, and I think God's reaping his, because he's in the clouds and we see all the pictures. Think of all the pictures of the taking up. Messiah is in the clouds and he takes it. So just before the judgment, he removes his people. Remember, we're not appointed to wrath. Specifically, the word says that we're not appointed to wrath. We are going to be removed. That's why he seals 144,000, because they're staying behind. He has to seal them. They're the only ones there that are being sealed. It doesn't say everyone's sealed. So why would we receive God's judgment when we are saved? Then what is the point of Messiah? So we're going to be taken, and we'll see that now. We'll see that in chapter 7. We'll be taken, and then he's going to pour out judgment. So if you can go to chapter 7. I'm actually going to start from chapter 6, verse 12. I want to go back there and go through this rapture, because we see in chapter 14 this happening, and I want to just reiterate it here. So verse 12, it says, Chapter 6, verse 12. And I looked when he opened the sixth seal and saw a great earthquake come to be. And the sun became black, as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of the heaven fell to the earth, as fig trees dropped its unripe figs, being shaken by a strong wind, and the heaven departed like a scroll being rolled up, and every mountain and island was moved out of its place. And the sovereigns of the earth, and the great ones, and the rich ones, and the commanders and the mighty, every slave and every free one hid themselves in the caves and in the rocks of the mountains, and said to the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him sitting on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb, because the great day of his wrath is come, and who is able to stand? Just want to quickly jump to Matthew 24 that correlates with this, so you will see that this is talking about the rapture. Matthew 24, let's start from verse 26. We'll start verse 23. It says, from 23 it says, if anyone then says to you, look, here's the Messiah, or there, do not believe, for the false Messiah and the false prophets shall arise, and they shall show great signs and wonders so as to lead astray, if possible, even the chosen ones. So, I have forewarned you. So if they say to you, look, he is in the desert, do not go out. In the desert, why? Saudi Arabia, desert, false Messiah, if you think of Jesus coming from there, it's just another point we can think of. Do not go out, or look, he is in the inner room, do not believe. For as the lightning comes from the east and shines to the west, so also shall the coming of the Son of Adam be. For wherever the dead body is, there the vultures shall be gathered together. And immediately after the distress, so remember we just read, there's a great earthquake, the moon and the sun are stop giving their light, the stars of heaven fall. Look here. And immediately after this distress of those days, the sun shall be darkened, and the moon shall not give its light, and the stars shall fall from the heavens, and the powers of the heaven shall be shaken. And then the Son of Adam shall appear in the heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth shall mourn, and they shall say, they shall see the Son of Adam coming in power and much esteem, and he will send his messengers with a great he will send his messages with a great sound of a trumpet, and they shall gather together his chosen ones from the four winds, from one end of heaven to the other. Okay? It's an exact correlation with what's happening there. The Messiah is in the clouds. We see in chapter 14, he sends out a sickle. He's in the clouds in chapter 14 here. We see he's in the clouds. He's sending there, it talks about trumpet to call the angels, and he harvests. Yeah. Sorry, where is that?
When we read about, with the succession of the first sickle and the second sickle.
Oh, in chapter 14.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's.
And the first one is the person on the cloud, is like the Son of Man. If that is the Messiah, then
Let me just get it quickly. In his hand a sharp sickle. Oh yeah, it says there in his hand a sharp sickle. And another messenger came. Well, it could be the yeah, I see that. It could just be an image that he is.
It's pointing, it's a remnants. When it came in Daniel, it says, when I saw someone like the Son of Man. That's how, so it's just a remnants.
Is it written like that in the release of Daniel when it says the coming of the Son of Man?
Yeah, it says then, yeah.
What, that's chapter 9, chapter 7.
Daniel 7:13.
So let's go there quickly. Whether it's talking about angel, son, or Messiah, I don't think it really matters because he could be.
Like an angel who's been commanded commanded by Messiah to do this, which is then essentially actually Messiah himself.
Yeah, he's an emissary, so whether it's Messiah showing them this is what you need to do. Sorry, this Bible chapters are in different order. Sorry, I don't know where Daniel is in this. I just need that page number. So give me one moment. Daniel 583. Yeah, sure. So there's just a comment here that he wants to make on what Rich was saying.
So with the bundles, they're not necessarily being taken out of the way they're being bundled together. But then the others, so if you say bundle text and then gather the meat on. But here it looks like the gathering of the meat is happening before the bundling of the text. But the bundling of the text is not then being removed. It's just then being bundled in groups. That's how I spoke about the meat in the text. So it's like they're being bundled, and then later on will be burned, but they're still there.
Actually, I recall someone else wrote to that same thing because a lot of pre-millennial, pre-trib guys, I think they refer to that as a proof text. So I'm trying to remember reading that some also. Verse 7, verse 13.
Yeah.
After this, I looked in the night vision and I saw a fourth beast. Right? Yeah. Sorry, 7 verse 13. I mean, it's verse 7. Sorry. I was looking in the night vision and I saw one like the son of Enosh, it says here, coming with the clouds of heaven, and he came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him. And to him was given rulership and preciousness and reign, or prestigious and reign, that all peoples, nations, and languages should serve him. And then it goes on, he'll have everlasting rule.
The reason why the scripture says son of Enosh is because Hebrew it's written by Enosh, which is son of man. So it's a funny way of putting it in the English Bible, so it's exactly, and also in verse 14, it's the exact same thing. So Hebrew,
Thanks. All right. I want to quickly just get through chapter 7 so we can end off with this rapture kind of story. So next week we're going to start with the judgments and we can carry on. If that's all right? It shouldn't be long. There's not that much. I think that is. Yeah, back to Revelation chapter 7. I hope this is all making sense. Having this flow and have to flow. So verse 7 it says, chapter 7 it says, and after this I saw, so it's just been the rapture, I think that we've seen taking place. I believe it's the rapture there. From all the other verses we can correlate with that. It makes the most sense. And after this I saw 4 messengers standing at the 4 corners of the earth holding the 4 winds of the heaven, that the wind should not blow on the earth, nor on the sea, nor on any tree. Now, whether this is actual winds of heaven or turbulence in the earth, because I've actually read a number of times it talks about this, when it's talking about, I think just before I think it's in Zechariah chapter 14, I think it mentions the same verse there. Just before Gog and Magog. We're going to get into that chapter because that chapter, Zechariah 14, is also Gog and Magog. That whole chapter is quite interesting how it correlates. It gives you more detail. It talks about, I think if I'm right, if I remember, I'll just double check. It talks about the winds of heaven being stopped to make way for the kings of the east to come. So I'm thinking it's that kind of settling before the storm. Okay. And I saw,
Can I add something? I don't know, just an interesting thing to think about and maybe ponder on. And so the angels you see, they're going to come and they're going to actually blow through the trumpets, they blow through the shofar. Isn't it also like, so just get me out and ponder this and meditate on this, but isn't it also that they're holding back the time of blowing, because when those trumpets come, then judgments come. And I'm using the shofar, when we were doing our studies on Wednesday, we came to the revelation that, you know, when they were blowing in Jericho, when the walls came down, it wasn't by just the sound, it was actually the ruach, the wind inside of the shofar, the power of God. So that it's like almost as if they're holding back the trumpets.
yeah, I think that's a great analogy, definitely. So what Shawnee, for the camera, what Shawnee was saying is that when you see these winds of heaven, it could definitely be referring to the trumpet judgments, that blowing, that wind that gets blown out. Thanks for that, Shawnee. I think that's definitely a great point to picture, because yes, that has been held back. The sealing of the 144,000 had to take place, and then judgment. Verse 2, and I saw another messenger coming up from the rising of the sun, holding the seal of the living Elohim, and he cried with a loud voice to the four messengers, to whom it was given to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth nor the sea. So once again here, I think this is a confirmation there, because you can't blow the trumpet, you can't harm the earth or the sea, because that's going to happen when the trumpets are blown until what? So do not harm the earth, nor the sea, nor the trees, until we have sealed the servants of our Elohim upon the forehead. And I heard, so once again, that mark of the beast, it's like a counterfeit of this sealing. Also, when we see God says you write your name on your forehead and your arm, your right arm, once again, the mark of the beast on the forehead or the hand. So it's trying to be a counterfeit to that. So there's a comment from Mark.
If you look at Islam, when they go around, when they go to Mecca and go around Kaaba, they actually place it on
Interesting, yeah. Verse 4, and I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 sealed out of the tribes of the children of Israel. And then I'm just, for time's sake, I'm just going to, I'm not going to read everyone here, but what's interesting is that you can go through this and you'll see which tribes are mentioned. But we can quickly jump in. We see here tribe of Judah, so there's 12,000 from each tribe, from Reuben, Gad, Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh, Simon, Levi. I'm not sure what this pronunciation is. Okay. Yissachar. Okay. Yissachar. It's quite interesting the way it's put here. Zebulun, Joseph, Benjamin. So which ones were left out there?
Dan and Ephraim.
So Dan and Ephraim are left out. Dan, interesting because Dan means judgment. Okay. And Ephraim, fruitfulness.
Ephraim not incorporated with Joseph.
Sorry?
Is Ephraim not incorporated with Joseph?
Yeah, but it's interesting that Manasseh is mentioned in Joseph. So it's just interesting if you look at those two names, because Dan's left out, there's going to be judgment, but not for his people. His people won't get judgment because they're taken out, and Ephraim is because their fruit, it means fruitfulness, you say, because of their fruitfulness. Anyways, it's just you can look at it from different points. Okay, verse 9, it says, after this I looked and saw a great crown which no one was able to, a great crowd, which no one, so up until this point, when we looked at Revelations 4 and 5, there was no one in the throne room of God. So now there's a massive crowd there. So the rapture. I just think there's more confirmation of it. After this, I looked and saw a great crowd which no one was able to count out, of all the nations and the tribes and the peoples and the tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, dressed in white robes and a palm branch in their hands. We will be given new robes. So I just think that it definitely must be, I know I'm harping on this, but I think there's a lot of evidence to show it. Verse 10, and cried out with a loud voice, saying, deliverance belongs to our Elohim, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. And all the messengers stood around the throne, and the elders and the 4 living creatures, and fell on their faces before the throne and worshipped Elohim, saying, Amen. The blessing and the esteem and the wisdom and the thanksgiving and the respect and the power and the might to our Elohim forever and ever. Amen. And one of the elders responded, saying to me, who are these dressed in white robes? And where did they come from? So this is, for me, the nail in the coffin for it. And I said to him, Master, you know. And he said to me, these are the ones coming out of the great distress, of the great tribulation, having washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Because of this, they are before the throne of Elohim and serving day and night in his dwelling place. And he who sits on the throne shall spread his tent over them. They shall hunger no more, neither thirst any more, neither shall the sun strike them, nor any heat, because the Lamb who is in the midst of the throne shall shepherd them and lead them to fountains of living water, and Elohim shall wipe away every tear from their eyes. All right, we are taken before the judgment. The seals are not judgments. As you can see, okay, it's not there, but if you've got the picture, you can see the seals. They never refer to as judgments. So we will be here. Those seals are birth pains and great tribulation. So the seals encompass birth pains, great tribulation, but not wrath. We're taken out before wrath. Right, you'll see there. The seals. So you'll see there, if you go up that line, you'll see there chapter 14, which is before the rapture, I believe. Like I said, I'm not going to say this is perfect. This is from the understanding I have. And then after rapture, chapter 7, the sealing, everything, and then we're going to go into the judgments God's going to pour out on the world. All right. So this is the point that is very confused between a lot of Christians, because they believe that the seals and the great tribulation and the wrath are all one thing. They're not. The seals are the birth pains, tribulation. Remember, tribulation is what the world does to the church. Wrath is what God does to the world. And they mix that up. And when it's mixed up, it's very difficult to understand what's going on here.
That passage, some translations actually say that died in the tribulation. So,
Well, it does. I think it says here martyred.
yeah,
I think it does mention, yeah.
some of them say martyred, some of them say died, and some of them say have come out of the tribulation. So it's, you probably would need to do the research.
Well, I think there's plenty of evidence that we see the Antichrist making war against God's saints, and it says, and he will prevail. So yes, there are going to be people dying from natural causes. There's going to be people dying from persecution. There's going to be a number of, I think it's, But definitely, we can look more into that. I think it's going to be all of them together. Because not everyone's going to die from persecution. I mean, I don't think if you're living out in the Karoo there in your little house, what I'm saying is that not every person is going to feel this. I don't think every person is going to feel, and I might be mistaken, but I think the Antichrist reign is going to be more local, more Israel-centric, more in that area. It may affect elsewhere, but I don't know how extreme it will be elsewhere. I don't know. But it says, blessed are those that actually die in this time, because their reward will be great, will be much greater. So those people that actually go through the tribulation are going to have a massive reward.
So, is there a specific verse why someone think this rapture happens in chapter 6? Or is it that you can see that the seals connect to as well? Is that the main reason?
No, I think the reason being is that when we see the last seal, or should I say, when we go through the seals, it lines up with Matthew 24. All the seals are the same as birth pains, and Messiah talks about in Great Tribulation. And then we see Messiah in Matthew 24. We see the rapture. He actually says, the Son, because I asked, when will your return be? And he says, I'll be in this. So he's saying the moon will be dark and this will happen. And we see that exact same pattern. And then it says, Son of Man's in the cloud. So obviously it must be talking about the same event. It has to be. It has to be talking about the same event.
Plus, it says, following the trouble of those days, the moon was not shining, which is a different time compared to where it's black here. But anyways, I want to ask another question. Why do you take the seals into the 3.5 years?
Because the seals are part of the Great Tribulation. Remember, it talks about the rider on the horse going out making war. Obviously, it's an analogy that war that's taking place, I believe, is the Antichrist making war with God's people. So the chapter 6, the seals are birth pains and Great Tribulation. Just like Matthew 24 is birth pains and Great Tribulation. Messiah actually breaks it up in Matthew 24, where he talks about specifically birth pains and then Great Tribulation. So go study Matthew 24 and that together, and you'll see the links there. So once again, one chapter is giving a bit more information on one topic, and another is giving more information on another, but actually together. Also, what we see is in Revelations 4 and 5, we don't see crowds before the throne. But in chapter 7, we see all of a sudden multitudes, nations, tongues, tribes before him. So the rapture had to take place there. It also had to take place, like after the 3.5 years, because that's when the Antichrist breaks the covenant. We know from Matthew 24, we see that he says, when the abomination of desolation is set up, flee from Jerusalem, from Judea. Because that's when the Antichrist comes in, and he's going to then start decimating people. That's a Gog-Magog war, when he comes in. So that happens in the middle of the week. We know that from Daniel 9:27. In the middle of the week, the Antichrist is going to do that. So we've got all these timelines. Well, it's all one timeline, but all these references that we've got to line up.
So the Antichrist, when he starts, the seventh seal is still happening.
So look, when the seals start is an interesting thing. I don't know. I can't say that the seals start at the beginning. I can't say the birth pains start at the beginning of the 7-year period. I don't know if they start before and there's a lead up to it and it just intensifies. I don't know, because it doesn't give a timeline of when it starts. But sorry, your question on that was?
So just I'm referring to the 7.5 years where he breaks the covenant.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's interesting how the seals go on even after that. This is what I was saying, that I would have thought.
Come after what? Oh, yeah.
After the middle.
Yes, remember, because the seals include the Great Tribulation. The Great Tribulation will start after it says he will desecrate the temple and then he makes war with the saints. Before, it always talks about this 42 months will be given to the Antichrist, 1,260 days. You know, it's a 7-year period, but it always refers to this time where the Antichrist is nowhere as a 3.5-year period. It's 42 months, 1,260 days. It's mentioned a few times. And in those references, it talks about him making war against the saints of God. So that's that Great Tribulation that starts.
Okay, within the tribulation, so when the Great Tribulation starts, I mean, is there a difference between the tribulation with the birth pains?
So I wouldn't call the birth pains tribulation. I would call that birth pains. It's ramping up. Things are aligning. Things are happening in the world for that, for the Antichrist to come to power. And then there's that great tribulation that starts.
So could it be possible that we are experiencing the beginnings of the birth pains now?
Anything's possible.
You know,
Yes, I know what you mean. When we start looking at what's happening in the world, like you mentioned the red heifers last week, all these things taking place, there's a lot of prophecy that's been fulfilled. And yes, I can say we possible. Will I say 100%? I don't know. You know, I think only when the temple starts being built, or the temple's built and sacrifices and offerings start, I can say, okay, guys, I think we're really, I think now we're really in that time. But until that actually happens, we can speculate.
Okay. Will it not be that when the temple starts being built, it will be slightly, it'll take a lot of wisdom to actually identify, because if you don't know already now, the fact that all the temple stuff is already prepared.
Yeah.
It's kind of prepared. So actually, we should be saying,
Look,
okay, fair enough, we haven't got the actual building there yet. But there is so much pointing towards the fact that it's in preparation and it's done already. The preparation work is almost complete.
so like I said, you know, I spent a lot of time on the timeline when these things I think will start. That's my understanding and thinking. I can't say 100% it is. I can't do, you know, can't do that. What I can say, look, the only time I can say 100% this is where we are is when the Antichrist goes into the temple and desecrates it. Then I can say we are in the middle of the week. Until then, we can say, I think we're in the 7-year period and in the birth pains, and the temple's up in the sacrifice of offerings, but that could happen before the 7-year period starts. It could be a number of years that happens. We don't know, we're not given time. But when the Antichrist comes in and desecrates, then we know, okay, we know we're 100%. Any other questions?
We don't have it in a couple of years, so it's just.
Next week we are doing, that's not there. Next week will be chapters there, chapter 11, 1 to 14. Once again, that chapter is broken up for a specific reason. We'll go through it and then we'll probably do, sure. Wait, I missed chapter 11. Okay, sorry. Chapter 11 was supposed to happen before. Okay, we'll do chapter 11 next week and then chapter 8, 9, and we'll see how it goes. All right. So maybe we'll see. I don't think we'll finish next week. I think next week we'll get through most of it and then we'll probably try to hit the rest the week after. All right, guys, I hope this is a lot more clear to you. I hope it's made sense, the order I've placed things, to try to take it from topical to sequential format. But yeah, I hope when you guys read this now, it will make a lot more sense to you. Shall we pray? And if anyone has any prayer requests or anything, please feel free to come here when you finish. Abba Father, thank you that we can come here, Father, as family, that we can enjoy a Shabbat together, Lord. We can read your word. Thank you that you brought us through the week, that you've given us the strength we needed. We have breath in our lungs, we have food, we have so much, Father, that many people don't have. Lord, I just want to thank you for the little things, you know, so many little things that you do that we can be grateful for. And sometimes we just lose sight of all the small things that you're doing in our lives. And I just want to say thank you, Father. We appreciate your blessing. We appreciate the blessing of Shabbat, that we can just rest and read your word freely, Father, without oppression, without hiding. We don't have to hide and, you know, we've got Bibles on our phones and physical Bibles and we can just open your word anytime. There's so many people that aren't allowed doing that. And we just say thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. May we never take it for granted because we don't know the day where we may not be able to do that. We just, in this time, we give you glory and thanks and praise. Lord, I thank you for each one here. Father, I ask that you bless them and that you keep them, that you go before them. Lord, that your protection will be on them. And Father, that your revelation of who you are will be evident to them, Lord. That hearts, each heart, your Father, will be opened up fully to who you are, to your fruits of the Spirit. Love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, faithfulness, long-suffering, and if any other, Lord, may we display you. Give you glory and praise in the short prayer. Amen. You want it? For those who want, Billy's going to do the Aaronic blessing quick. Those who want to stay.
יברכך אדוני וישמרך, יאר אדוני פניו אליך ויחונך, יישא אדוני פניו אליך וישם לך שלום. Amen.
You're good. What do you like? Still not sure. Oh, we can just cut that. Good job.
Pray.